I think we can start now because there are a lot of people waiting here. So I don't want them to wait. And I think as we progress, people keep on joining in.
For sure.
Let me kick off. So good morning and good afternoon, everybody. And I welcome all of you in our Dark Matter webinar series part 2, where we will cover supply chain attacks in APAC. So thanks for joining in. And I hope you'll really enjoy our sessions. Let me make a quick introductions for the team here. Myself, Rajiv, and I take care of sales and channels operations for APAC. I'm based out of Bangalore, India. I have Ali Uzun, who is the speaker for today's session, and an electronics graduate and kind of having a cybersecurity experience from last 6 years and with SolarWinds from last almost close to 2 years now. And he'll be contributing in terms of making you guys aware that how important supply chain attacks are in your overall business resilience part of it. We have Kalpesh from our India team. He's a solution engineering manager based out of Pune, and he'll be supporting you in terms of the backend for the Q&A session. So feel free to kind of ask your questions through the Q&A chat chat window. And we have Kenan Dogar, who's also supporting Kalpesh as a regional technical account manager from our Turkey office. So thank you for joining, everybody. And just to start with, I would like to set the context in terms of why supply chain attacks are important. Like, why are we covering this? What's the significance of thinking from the attacks point of view that supply chain could go in a wrong way? So in terms of supply chain attacks, I think it's very important to know that this is the kind of a backdoor entry for any attackers to get into your systems. And they try to kind of target the vulnerabilities or weak links in your supply chain and try to compromise the final products or services delivered to any organization. That's where they make the entire impact, and the consequences kind of becoming more and more harmful in terms of organizations to release their products or kind of offering the services to their customers. But why are they so significant? What could go wrong? In terms of, I would say, top 5 impact, which any organization can see from the business resilience point of view from the supply chain attacks, could be impact on multiple organizations. So if one of the vendors of yours has a weak link in your weak link in their own system, it can impact downline stream all the organizations which are using their product. Trust erosion. It kind of impacts a great kind of reputational damage to the trust of the particular vendor, because you trusted them and you are using their software or services to include into your product or services, and that has exposed your credentials as well, or your financial data, or your kind of a confidential data as well. Data and intellectual property loss. That's one of the biggest things, because once everybody is exposed, they can lose their financial data or their intellectual property as well. Operational disruptions, because once you are building any product using any vendor's product as well, if that gets impacted, even your product release gets delayed as well, or your kind of offering of services can delayed as well. In terms of regulatory and compliance, if you have been kind of impacted because of these challenges, you become non-compliant. So these are the typical kind of impacts which any organization can see from the business resilience point of view. And that is why covering these supply chain attacks in your cyber defense program is very, very critical and important. Here is the agenda for you today, where Ali will start with the year-end report, which we publish every year to kind of make you aware that what are the threats evolving and how kind of organizations are responding to those. Trends in APAC versus global. What are the trends which are typically important for APAC region? What is a supply chain attack? Examples and some statistics because of those attacks, what impact has been to the business. And at the last, we will also show you how SolarWinds can actually help you mitigating the risk from the supply chain attack. So thank you and enjoy your time on this webinar, and feel free to ask the questions and make it a more interactive session. Over to you, Ali. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for a briefly introduction and then brief explanation of supply chain attack. So let's start with the end of the year report. It is quite important to see the graphical views and the numbers. So let me just briefly explain it, the contents that we have in the report. SolarWinds got more than like 1.5 million domains discovered in past year. So more than 21K users and more than 200 million IP search that we've done. So last year was super busy days actually for especially for in cybersecurity sector. So these are the numbers that Socradar is done. For sure, regional news, malware analyze, Sigma rules, Sierra rules, Unity IOCs, and many other results we shared with other customers as well. And of course, as you guys know, the dark web with numbers quite important part. Once we talk about the Telegram channels, Discord channels, hacker forums, and IOC channels, ICQ channels, because you guys know already these channels was like man of the year since there were a lot of leakages in there. As you can see, starting with Telegram channels, almost like 3,500 Telegram channels found, and the following ICQ channels with almost 350 channels. So this one numbers quite a lot, especially last year, we got many findings, especially in these channels as well. So APAC countries included in this slide. As you can see, the list on the right side hand, starting Australia, Nepal, New Zealand, Bangladesh, Hong Kong, Singapore, many of them. But I can easily say that we're gonna hear Australia, India, and the like Hong Kong and Singapore more than comparing the others, since there are many things happened in the last year. Let's compare global and APAC at the same time with the numbers and monthly dark web threat. So I split them out like month by month, that you can easily see the numbers and changing one by one. So as you can see, the highest number on the last month of the year, which is quite important for every year. As you guys know, in cybersecurity sector, we need to cover ourselves and be careful, more important than the other months on November or December. And of course, summer times, everybody's going holiday. Nobody care about the company sometimes, because we are not focusing on the company once we are on leave. So that is why the typical attacks can be happen, especially on summertime. And as we can see in dark web trends also happening on June, July, August, following to November. Country mentions and unicorns. So it is quite important comparing global and APAC, starting with United States and following India. But of course, the key point here is India, because it is almost top, like India in global part, especially in APAC, is the first one as well. And Indonesia and Australia is following India as well. Here, the mention alone and total mentions, unicorn is percentage and stuff like that. Industry mentions. As you guys know, the global and APAC region can be different, right? But of course, as we talk about global one, first of all, information and telecom tax quite high amount, and financial and banking sectors following on the second line. But once we talk about APAC region, public administration is quite important, and comparing the second line is quite high difference between each other. As you can see, like multiple times, as you can see with information and telecom tax. But of course, we can say financial sector and banking sector are actually important, especially in the APAC region as well, as we heard about a lot of. Cost subjects. I mean, global and APAC region quite similar. As you can see, sharing data and selling data is quite important and high amount. But the rest of them, like with the lower luggages and stuff like that, like buying data, hack announcement, partnership, cooperation, and target attack. But of course, as I just mentioned about, even in global, even in APAC region, we see sharing data and selling data with high amounts. So typical question and the main goal of this actual presentation webinar is supply chain. I'm sure that everybody already knows like some ideas about supply chain attacks, but let me just briefly explain. A supply chain attack is a type of cyber attack that targets an organization by compromising its suppliers or partners. Instead of like attacking the organization directly, the attackers exploit vulnerabilities in supply chain to gain unauthorized accesses. But they compromise trusted entities like such as, let's say, software vendors, introducing malicious codes into products or service used by the target. But this can lead to data breaches, operational distribution, and reputational damage, which is really important because once you get reputational damage, it is something really hard to get it back. So once reputation damage happen, company get damaged a lot. Yeah, general types of supply chain attacks. There are millions of types, but let me just explain the major ones, starting with software tampering. Actually, illegally attaching code within software updates, or let's say applicating to introduce elements, right? And then here the example that you see here from SolarWinds attack, where the malicious code was inserted into the software update mechanism. And of course, it's affecting numerous organizations globally as well. So that is why it is quite important example. And hardware interferences. So it's quite important too, because sabotaging physical components or devices here before reaching end users. So it's quite important. So that's why I give you this example from Supermicro incident, where it was alleged that tiny chips and were stated to hardware to create backdoors in the equipment part. And of course, third-party source, it is also quite important. Targeting like the primary entity. Primary entity is the main point here, because once you targeting the primary entity, you don't need to care about the second one because it is primary. And through vendors or service providers with access to the system. It is quite important too. So let's continue with the types of supply chain attacks with open source code reports actually. Injection like malicious code into open source libraries or companies here. And then the example is coming from a malicious package is in APM, a JavaScript package manager, where attackers publish a compromised version of popular packages to steal data. I mean, everybody already heard about this, but update mechanism breach is quite important once we talk about this kind of things like compromised update mechanism, we can call about it as well. But the exploiting widely used software update mechanism to distribute mechanism. So it is malware, so that's why it's quite important as well. As you see the example from CC Linux attack, where it happened in last year, it was quite high amount, but where legitimate software update was compromised to distribute malware to user software as well. And as you know, like network provided attacks quite important as well, as we heard about it too much, especially in the last year, targeting like companies that provide network infrastructure or service to access multiple downstream targets. It is quite important. So that is why I make sure you be aware of it as well. Information stealing with via suppliers. It is also really important because supply vulnerability exploitation is actually the main point of supply chain attacks, because unauthorized to sensitive data through suppliers with weaker security, right? And as you know, the sensitive data are really critical, especially in these days, becoming more important than before. As you see in an example, the Maersk shipping company incident, where attacks exploited a vulnerability in the third-party tax software. It is quite good example to be able to understand this type. But let's continue with traditional theft, which is once we are talking about stealing credentials, quite important, because stealing credentials from a supplier or third party to access the target system. And the examples coming from Okta supply chain attack, where attackers gain access to sensitive customer data. You know, customer sensitive data is quite important. Once we say sensitive data, it can be credit cards numbers, 16-digit numbers of card, let's say mail addresses, social security number, driving license numbers. These kind of things can be really sensitive. And let's talk about insider trades or in supply chain as well. Insiders like exploiting access within the supply chain malicious purposes as well. Here's the example that you can see below as well. But the main part is example of supply chain, because this example will help you to understand very well with the numbers actually. And also, I'm sure that everybody heard about Okta. It happened in on October last year. And like Okta and an identity and authentication service provider forced a breach. And as you know, like threat actor access like files uploaded. You know, like what I was telling like just before is the sensitive data is the key point, right? So that is why threat actors like access this file uploaded by certain customers in support cases. This is one the thing that happened on Okta as well, like compromising data for approximately as you can see here, 18,000 customers, which is really high amount. So the access information include the full names, mail addresses, in some cases, phone numbers, usernames, ID numbers, and stuff like that. As I just mentioned just before, it is quite important because this kind of information is a key point of the companies and really sensitive. JetBrains supply chain attack happened on September and October at the same time in last year. But here the main guy is APT29. I'm sure that everybody heard about it before millions of times because APT29 was man of the year. They did a lot of things. And there's also no like Cosivir, Midnight Blizzard. But the thing is that here, what happened, links to the Russian SVR exploited a vulnerability, as you can see the number, the vulnerability, the which is in Team City, transfer like Team City speculating network access, like CISA and other agencies issued adversaries with attack indicators and technicals, which is quite important part. So that's why we see this kind of damages that is happening from APT29 because as far as I know, and then as far as my experience that I got in this sector, APT29 always focusing on these things and vulnerabilities. So that is why we need to keep upgrading our versions if there is any vulnerability on your device. MOVEit, supply chain attack, June 23. I'm sure that everybody knows it. Everybody heard about it before, but let me briefly explain what happened, what exactly happened here. Like MOVEit, like supply attack was really like caused by file transfer softwares, and with these vulnerabilities, as you can see, like 23, 34, and 362 was an SQL injections flag that allowed for remote code executions. I'm sure that you already know remote code execution is really important. That means everybody can reach you guys out with the remote code. Actually, file transfer software like allowing remote code execution exploited from May 27 in 2023 year. It's affected over like 2,000 organizations, which is really high amount, as you can see below, and had become impacting as estimated 60 million individuals, which is high amount. So it is actually affected everybody else, not only MOVEit. So that is why it is quite important to make sure this vulnerabilities and remote code execution are secure. Latitude, it is also really important, but let me just briefly explain it with the numbers. Data exploited include approximately 7.9 million, including driving license numbers. And as you guys know, like passport numbers really sensitive, right? It includes the ID numbers, it includes every sensitive data at the same time. So like around 53,000 passport numbers, less than 100 monthly account statements, and 900 loan application was caused for this. And financially, 76 million and contribute to an overall loss of like 98 million in the first half of the year, which is quite a lot, especially once we are talking about the half of the year. Starting with this on the year, it's quite a lot number. So I'm sure that with this company, start 23 years really bad, and it caused in Australia as well. Let's talk about some statistics with the numbers, what happened in the last year, because you know, like cybersecurity ventures predict that the global cost of their supply chain to business, you know, like will reach nearly, as you can see here, 138 billion by 2031. And the up from 46 million in 23, like based on like 15% year-over-year growth. So it is actually quite amount. Once we talk about like $138 billion, I cannot even imagine it. But especially for 23, which is quite number, only 1 year, like $46 billion, which is quite a lot. And of course, like Gartner predicts that by 25, 45% of organizations worldwide will have experienced attacks on their software supply chain, a threefold increase from 21, which means technology is improving a lot. And as soon as it's growing rapidly, everything is changing, right? Attacks are changing, growing up, and the amounts of attacks are growing up rapidly too. So that is why we should keep following this kind of technologies and gain our experiences on that, because otherwise we're gonna lose a lot with these attacks. So, which is the most exciting part I can easily mention? I don't want to mention a lot of time, but let me just briefly explain how SolarWinds can help for this. We got cyber intelligence module, as you can see, as third module, and then we got supply chain intelligence sub-module under of it. As you guys know, big companies working with other brands, right? Especially imagine that you're working with ABC company, and as soon as you guys working each other, you're sharing your data with each other, right? And imagine that ABC company get hacked. What's going to happen? Your data is going to get hacked at the same time, because since you guys sharing your data each other, it is really risky once they get hacked too. So that is why it is quite important to know the latest hacked companies in real time to take the necessary steps before something happens. So here in supply chain intelligence, we monitor latest hacked companies as soon as you see any company that you're working with on the list, so that you can take the necessary step before something happens. That's why we call SolarWinds is early warning system. Timing is the most critical part in cybersecurity part. So that is why we should be aware of it and take the necessary step before something happens. And the next one is vendor intelligence. What we can do, we can add the vendors that you're working with on the platform, that you can see if they have any vendor intelligence, if they have any risk. You can even know what the risk of it. So that is why it's quite important to be aware of it before something happens. But the third thing is supply chain report. It is also really important to be able to see everything else on the list. Like I already add a few popular vendors, especially like Google, Fortinet, Palo Alto, Microsoft, Cisco. So as you guys know, like we are working with them, right? We are sharing our data with them too. I'm sure that everybody's sharing their data with Microsoft, with Cisco, since they are really big vendors. But it is quite important to know what is happening in there. It is quite important to know the risk level of the companies at the same time. So that's why make sure you guys add the vendors that you're working with here. Just click on the button, just click on the add vendors and add anything that you wish, and generate a report directly from the platform to be able to see the risk level, human intelligence, dark web findings, their attack surface, and many third-party assessment report to be able to be aware of it. So you're gonna say, okay.
So I have a question here. So are you trying to say, like, if the required vendor is not visible in the list provided by SolarWinds, you can go ahead and add that vendor as an additional and kind of keep monitoring and observing their, observing them?
Raj, since there are millions of companies in the world, it is quite impossible to be aware of it. So all of them, but make sure once you click on the button here, if the company that you would like to add is not listed on the list there, just let us know, let us with support team, and they're gonna add it like immediately, and we're gonna make sure it is added there, and then we are following them up. No worries. But of course, I'm sure that for big companies and popular companies will be listed here there as well.
That's the reason I asked this, because not everybody follows the global companies. Like there are a lot of other vendors which are like local vendors. They use it in terms of integrating with any of their products and all those things. And those vendors can also be monitored in terms of whether they've been hacked or attacked in the recent.
Really great.
Right. Okay.
Really great question. Thank you for that. Because once I add the popular vendors here, everybody can think, okay, this only companies that we can monitor now.
Correct.
I just add
yeah.
like some vendors are really popular, but make sure once you click on the button, if it's not listed there, just let me know and let us know. We can add them all here and we can start following them up. But
And is there a limit for number of vendors or?
actually it is 50, but it really depends on the subscription.
Okay.
So as you guys know, we have professional and enterprise at the same time. So we are actually hearing the company needs first. And after that, we are actually organizing the subscription according to their needs. If they need more, we can organize it. But of course, as part of my experiences I got in Socradar, most of the customer, they're really satisfied with 50 numbers for vendors list.
Yeah.
But
Thank
the
you.
question is coming, how I can access the Socradar platform? I do a favor for you guys, which you can have freemium with this barcode. Just scan this barcode and fill just 3 questions with the form, just putting the company name, company mail address, that's all. So why not? I mean, it's freemium. Just try to understand the capabilities, feature, and see the risk level of your company, because it is something really important information. Actually, once you know the risk level of the company, once you know the risk where they exactly, so you can actually take the next steps, take the action to be able to make them solve. So that is why we are trying to help you guys to get access for free. You just use this barcode to be able to get access for freemium account. So I mean, I'm done with the technical part.
And in this free version, they get the full capability for the entire platform, right?
Yes,
Full features.
full capability, but freemium is limited with the numbers, like which we do takedowns and the black market credits. But what we have after freemium stage, the POC stage is starting with 14 days free trial, which they can access full visibility, full features will be open in POC, just to be able to ensure that everybody aware of the capabilities, features, and stuff like that. So yeah, I hope everything is clear in your mind. Just make your organization safer, because 24 year will be really dangerous. I'm sure that supply chain attack, ransomware attacks, quite important, especially in these days. Once we talk about the technologies, artificial intelligence becoming more important than before. So make sure you guys cover your company really good and use some Socradar tools to be able to ensure where the risk level, what is the risk level, and then where the problem is. So thank you for your time, and thank you for your listening to me. And then I'll give the microphone to Raj to be able to end the session with some sentence. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much, Ali. And thanks for covering the entire session. So I open the floor for any questions. If any of the attendees want to ask any questions, we are ready to answer those. We can wait for a couple of minutes. If you wish to ask any questions, you can type in the window, Q&A chat window.